We're going to pick up in, as I said, Daniel chapter 9, and this is what I often refer to as the spooky stuff about faith. I call it the spooky stuff because it's the stuff that we're very uncomfortable with. We live in a very secular world today, especially here in the West, in Canada, North America, Europe, right? We're very, very secular in that we like to be able to classify the world in the things that we can observe with our senses, right? A very scientific mindset. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? The pursuit of science has led to many great advances in medical science and in the ways that we live our life today. Like, we only get to live the life of luxury that we get to live today because of the advancements that have been made, because of the studying. But as I often say, I always say this to people, I say science is just the studying of the fingerprints of God. Right? We're just looking at the impressions that God has made throughout his creation as he molded and shaped the universe, as he created the laws that govern everything, as everything that moves and breathes is a result of his very spirit that he has imparted upon us. And I think this is incredible. This is incredible. And this is why I'm actually a big science guy. I love reading like new journals and stuff, as I've famously said before, especially to Brent and Nina. I hate biology because biology is very uncertain. It's like sometimes A, sometimes B, maybe this. But most of the time I'm much more into like physics and chemistry, so there's a lot more certainty there. And I like that. I like understanding how the world works. I like looking at that, and I think it's good. But the fact of the matter is that sometimes we try to reduce it, and this has become a thing in our world today, in our culture today, where we've tried to reduce it down and we say, yes, but there's nothing else but this. And I think we forget the fact that there is actually a spiritual side. I remember having this conversation with people many years ago where we talked about the idea, you got to have your physical and emotional and your spiritual well-being. Because I think a lot of people neglect their spiritual well-being because we don't really want to address those things because they're spooky and scary and sometimes off-putting. But if you ask our world today, it's funny how secular they are, and yet these are the same people that were probably down at the Psychic Wellness Fair just a week ago down in Finland, right? Like these people that say, you guys are crazy for believing that Jesus rose from the grave are the same people that think that they can talk to dead people. So, like, enough of that paradox there. I think that's a bit crazy myself. That you could believe so strongly one way and yet your other belief is just completely counter to that. But there is a spiritual thing going on here. We're going to examine that here in chapter 10 of Daniel today. And so we got to keep in mind that Daniel has just had the vision of the 70 weeks. Remember, he went to the Lord in prayer and petition in chapter 9, and he's just seeking, and he's got this heart for his people, and he wants them to, he doesn't want God to forget them, and then he gives them this vision about what's going to happen and all these things that are about to happen. And then it says, in the 3rd year of Cyrus, king of Persia, a revelation was given to Daniel, who was called Belteshazzar. Its message was true, and it concerned a great war. And the understanding of the message came to him in a vision. And at that time, I, Daniel, mourned for 3 weeks. I ate no choice food, no meat or wine touched my lips, and I used no lotions until the 3 weeks were over. And on the 24th day of the 1st month, as I was standing on the bank of the great river, the Tigris, I looked up and there before me was a man dressed in linen, with a belt of fine gold from Uhaz around his waist. His body was like topaz, his face like lightning, his eyes like flaming torches, his arms and legs like the gleam of burnished bronze, and his voice was the sound of a multitude. All right, first thing I want us to think about, whatever it is, and we keep seeing this pattern with Daniel, right? Daniel takes no joy in judgment. Daniel takes no joy in the things that are about to come. Daniel knows that they're necessary, right? We constantly see Daniel in this position where he is in mourning, where he covers himself in sackcloth and ashes, and he prays and he weeps and he mourns, not only for his own people, but for what is going to happen. Right? God has revealed to him some of the things that are about to happen in the future. And as we remember in chapter 9, he revealed to him that the Greeks were going to unite, rise up, and conquer Persia. Now think about how crazy this prophecy must have been to the average listener. If he went around and telling people about this, a disorganized group of Europeans are going to conquer the largest known empire known to man. Right? Obviously, bigger empires have come since, but at this time, the Persian Empire is the largest empire that has existed. in this day. Like it is crazy. Under Cyrus the Great, the king of Persia, the conquest led the empire to go from the Persian Gulf all the way across to the Mediterranean, right? Up almost into Europe, okay? This was incredible, right? They were on Greece's doorstep. Nothing had ever been done. As far as they were concerned, they had unified the entire world under a single banner, the Persian banner. It was incredible. And then who shows up? I want us to pay attention to what the person that's describing here. And I think it's important for us to recognize this because, number one, this is not Jesus. I want us to be very clear. This is not Jesus who's being revealed. This is not another vision being revealed. He's seeing someone. He's seeing something. Who's like a man. And he's dressed and he has all this, he has this look of regalness to him, a real divine character. He is glorious and beautiful, and yet he exhibits power and glory as this just radiates off of him. And we're going to learn later in the same chapter that who he's actually looking at right now is Gabriel, one of the angels. This is Gabriel. It's important for us to recognize because who he's seeing here, right? And this is the thing that we don't normally like to talk about. It's what I said before. It's the spooky part. Is there is a spiritual part going on. There is a spiritual component to our faith and to our world. And what's funny is even though we can actually, scientifically, we know this, right? It's been proven through mathematics. We know that there are other dimensions. We know that there are other realities. We know that we do not exist on our own, and yet whenever we get into this stuff and we talk about the fact that there is a heavenly realm, there is this other parallel dimension that exists to us. You've probably not maybe heard it expressed in that exact terminology, but that is exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about something that exists parallel to ourselves, alongside with us, and yet using a scientific word, right, a parallel dimension that exists with us. We often think of it as the heavenly realm, the divine beings where God exists, right? And yet, this isn't so far from us. This is actually rather close. And then we're going to continue on in verse 7, where it says, I, Daniel, was the only one who saw the vision. And those who were with me did not see it. But such terror overwhelmed them that they fled and hid themselves. And so I was left alone, gazing at the great vision, and I had no strength left. See, my face turned deathly pale, and I was helpless. Then I heard him speaking, and I listened to him. I fell into a deep sleep, my face to the ground. A hand touched me and set me trembling on my hands and knees. He said, Daniel, you who are highly esteemed, consider carefully the words that I'm about to speak to you, and stand up, for I have now been sent to you. And when he said this to me, I stood up trembling. Then he continued, do not be afraid, Daniel. Since the first day that you set your mind to gain understanding and humbling yourself before God, your words were heard. And I have come in response to them, but the prince of the Persian kingdom resisted me for 21 days. Then Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me because I was detained there with the king of Persia. Now I have come to explain to you what will happen to your people and in the future, for the vision concerns a time yet to come. See, what I love that he just explained here, and I think it's funny because this wouldn't have needed much explanation to the Jews, because the Jews had a very active and understood very much so the participation of the spiritual alongside the physical, right? It was just assumed. And the reason I feel like I've had to get into this so much is because I feel that this is not normal for our culture today. This is not how we perceive the world. We don't perceive the spiritual world interacting and interfacing and actually altering the course of events here in the physical. We don't see it that way. But just because we don't see it that way, just because we don't understand it that way, doesn't mean it's not true. As we see here, it says that Gabriel, who he was being resisted by the prince of the Persian kingdom for 21 days. Where we're talking about a spiritual battle here. And it required Michael, another one of the angels, one of the chief princes he's identified as, to come and help him because he had been detained. You ever thought about that? What we do on this side affects that as well. See, and this is something that Persia understands. This is something that many other religions around the world understand. They understand that what they're doing, their prayers, their petitions, they're seeking after their gods, they're going after this has an effect on the spiritual realm. And I think all too often as Christians, because it gets a little spooky and it gets difficult to deal with and difficult to think about and difficult to understand, we just decide that we're just going to ignore it altogether. You know what? I don't understand this. It feels icky. I don't know what to do about it, so I'm just going to pretend it doesn't exist. But I want to ask you something. If you were living in France in World War II, and you just said, you know what, I don't want this to happen. I'm just going to pretend there's no Germans marching down the street. Does it change the fact that there are Germans marching down the street? No, not at all. They're still there. Things are still happening. Things are still going on. And whether you are going to be a participant in the spiritual battle, whether you're going to be there or be witness or understand what's going on, the fact of the matter is whether or not you're observing it, whether or not you're paying attention, whether or not you're trying to learn and apply yourself spiritually, it's happening with or without you regardless. And the fact of the matter is we're seeing this more and more and more each and every day. It's funny, there's a guy we go to coffee with quite often. John will know who I'm talking about here. And he can often dive into the more conspiratorial side, because he thinks, the powerful people that are controlling everything. And I go, well, you're half right. There is powerful people that are in control of things, but it's just not the people that you're thinking. Right? It's Satan. From the beginning, he's been fighting against us. From the beginning, he's been pulling the strings. From the beginning, he's been doing all these things. And the very fact that you've fallen for this illusion, that you think there's just a natural reaction, a natural reason for understanding these things, means that you have fallen for his deception once again. You've believed his lies and allowed yourself to be taken out of the spiritual battle, to no longer pray and pray for the encouragement that you need, for the defense you need, for the weapons that you need, in order to defend yourself against the acts of the enemy. The fact of the matter is, whether or not you want to participate, you need to be ready and defended. You need to be wise enough that when you see these things, these spiritual things happening in our world, that you can see it for what it really is. You can see when the enemy's moving, and you can see when it's just a farce. But you're not going to be able to see that if you ignore it or if you obsess. Right? If you're too focused on one detail, right? Think about like when you're working, you've heard the expression, you miss the forest for the trees, right? You get too obsessed with the one little detail that you miss the great grand landscape that you're looking at. But then the alternative is just as bad, not looking at all. Right? Some of us obsess and some of us completely fall away, but the fact of the matter is that we need to participate, we need to understand, we need to know, and we need to be able to see with open eyes what is going on. Because there is a battle going on. And just because the war has been won, right? We know how it ended. We know what's going to happen. We know the plan that God has for this place. And we know that with the sacrifice of Jesus, there's nothing the enemy can do. He is lost. But the fact of the matter is, right, and we see this in any war, just because the enemy has lost doesn't mean they're not going to go down swinging. And that's what's happening today. Just because the enemy knows he's lost doesn't mean he's not going down swinging. And he's going to take as many people with him as he can. Let's look at verse 15. It says, while he was saying this to me, I bowed with my face toward the ground and was speechless. The one who looked like a man, right? He's not a man, but he looks like a man. He touched my lips. I opened my mouth and began to speak. I said to the one standing before me, I am overcome with anguish because of the vision, my Lord, and I feel very weak. How can I, your servant, talk with you, my Lord? My strength is gone, and I can hardly breathe. Again, the one who looked like a man touched me and gave me strength. Do not be afraid, you who are highly esteemed, he said. Peace, be strong now. Be strong. When he spoke to me, I was strengthened, and I said, speak, my Lord, since you have given me strength. So he said, do you know why I have come to you? Soon I will return to fight against the prince of Persia. And when I go, the prince of Greece will come. But first I will tell you what is written in the book of truth. No one supports me against them except Michael, your prince. And in the first year of Darius the Mede, I took my stand to support and protect it. Okay, I carried on to verse to chapter 11, verse 1, because I feel like you should never end a verse in the middle of a sentence. That's crazy. A couple quick things I want to mention. I know I made a mention during worship today. We were singing that song. It's called Forever Yahweh. And one of the first words it says is Adonai. The word here that you'll see when he keeps saying, my Lord, my Lord, my Lord, this is the word Adon, which means my Lord. But Adonai means the Lord of Lords. Just wanted to separate that out because I know I've heard so many people say this when they're looking at the Bible. They say, aha, but see, they're exalting this angel up as the Lord. And it's like, no. This is Adon, not Adonai. Right? This is not the King of Kings. This is just someone whom we submit ourselves under the authority to, right? Just because my boss has some authority over me in my life doesn't mean that my boss is the King of Kings in my life, right? We submit to authority all the time, and it doesn't mean that it is God's authority. The other thing I wanted to point to us is this, is once again we have this revealed to us, right? Don't worry. Do you know why I've come to you? I will return to fight against the prince of Persia, and when I go, the prince of Greece will come. He's telling them once again, don't worry. I know things look bad. I know the battle is thick. I know things look difficult. I know things are going wrong. I know things aren't going the way that you hoped. Daniel, remember Daniel, he was praying and pleading. He wanted to be able to go back to Jerusalem, to reestablish the holy city, that God could once again be exalted from his holy hill. And he says, look, I know it's not going the way you planned, but God has a plan. Things are going to come. And again, he makes that prophecy once again. Remember those disorganized Greeks, the ones that, are basically just sheep herders and goat farmers? Yeah, don't worry. They're going to rise up and conquer the most powerful empire that's ever existed. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine? But it's because God has a plan. He's got a plan for Daniel. He's got a plan for us. Right? And we see this again and again in the scripture. That although these spiritual battles are waging, although the enemy is coming after your soul, and although the enemy is trying to drag you down with him and trying to destroy you and destroy the church and destroy whatever he can on his way out, God's got a plan. So who are you going to trust? Who are you going to put your faith in? Where are you going to go with this? Do you want to put your faith in God? Say, you know what? Yeah, I think God does have a plan. I'm going to trust him. I'm going to let him lead. I'm going to let him decide. I'm going to let him do what he needs to do. Or are you going to push back and say, no, you know what, God, you're not doing it on my timetable. You're not doing it the way I want things to be done. So God, I'm going to push back. Friends, it only ends one way for those who push against God. So let us seek to be like Daniel in this moment. And we're going to get into it in chapter 11 where the angel Gabriel is going to go through it and he's going to explain to Daniel in more detail what is about to happen. And I'm actually really excited to get into that. And we're going to talk about that particular vision specifically. But I want us to remember, because it's so easy to forget. Our lives get busy, things happen, and we forget that there's a spiritual thing happening around us at all times. And unless we go to God, unless we nurture that, unless we take care of that spiritual side of ourselves and say to God, you know what, I want you to lead, I want you to guide me, I need you to be my strength, I need you to be my source, then it'll fall apart. And I don't want that for any of you. I want us all to be strong, to adorn the armor of God that Paul talked about, and be ready for what's to come. Right? It's not a battle of flesh and blood. It's not with swords or spears. But it's a battle of wills that takes place, and it can only be won with the strength of God. It can only be won if we allow our spirit to be nurtured by him, to be held by him. And it can only be won if we're willing to pay attention and realize that it's happening around us and stop ignoring it. So as we go to our time of prayer, and as we go to our time of prayer at home as well, let's consider that as we pray. You know, maybe there's things coming against you. Just say, you know what? Enemy be gone. Enemy be gone. I know the enemy is coming against me. I know that if I profess a faith in Jesus Christ, the enemy is definitely coming against me. By the blood of Jesus, I am free. I am free from your influence. I am free from your chains. I have the power of Christ with me. So let us seek that out this morning as we go to the Lord in prayer. And so if there's any prayer requests this morning, please let us share that. We can pray with each other. We can allow each other to understand, to just encourage one another, love on each other, and take care of those spiritual needs of one another. Because at the end of the day, we're not going to be able to do it alone. This is why we meet as a church. Because none of us have what it takes to do it on our own. That's why we come together. We encourage each other, love on one another, and aid each other. Not just in our physical needs, but in our spiritual needs as well.